Good morning and welcome to this edition of Healing Moments with Martha. Today, I am just excited to be able to have a wonderful conversation with Amanda Anderson. Amanda Anderson is author of a fabulous book that I'm still reading, actually. It's on friendship and it's called All My Friends Have Issues. And I first heard the book about a year or so ago after she released it through a friend of mine, David Zaylor, as a mutual friend, and just laughed out loud when I heard the interesting conversation and title for this book. And I am delighted to have Amanda. She joins us this morning from Orange County, California. Thank you, Amanda.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure. Like I said, I'm like 3/4 through the way of this book, and I can honestly say that it is a must read on anybody's book list. And Amanda, if you would give us a little backstory on who is Amanda Anderson and where you're from, where you grew up, and all of those fun facts that make Amanda.
Okay, well, I am in Southern California, I was born in Northern California, moved here when I was 3, so I've lived here my whole life. My dad has a theology degree from Fuller, but he gave up being a pastor when I was little because he felt like he couldn't be as present as a dad as a pastor. So I had this theologically trained dad who sold dishwashing soap for a living. I was raised in Sunday school. I had a fabulous Sunday school teacher who actually her daughter was in our class and she moved every year with us from first grade through 6th grade and gave us this great theological education growing up with her. I have 2 younger brothers, so I'm a firstborn child, and I like to say a recovering perfectionist. I'm the only daughter and, the firstborn, I have all of those perfectionist achievement issues.
Yeah.
I went to a school here in California called Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and started out majoring in journalism and quit after my freshman year because I felt like they were teaching me not how to seek truth, but how to spin truth. And I'm like, well, idealistic 18, 19-year-old. I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. So I switched to being an English major. And I met my husband at Cal Poly. We've been married for 21 years. We met when I was 18.
Wow.
So we reached the point a while ago where I've been with him longer than without. So that's still kind of a wild thing. And when I graduated from college, I got a job at a local luxury lifestyle magazine called The Coast. So I had some glorious years of writing about all kinds of silly things like makeup, and I had a home column and I wrote architectural profiles, and it was a really fun job. Did travel writing, got to travel a lot with my husband.
It sounds like it was, yeah.
My goodness, it was such a fun job. And then we had our first baby, and I have 2 daughters. They're 13 and almost 17 years old. And I quit working for the magazine when my oldest was 2. And so now I'm still surprised by what I do now. I got really involved in a mom's group called Moms International when my kids were babies and became super passionate about supporting other young mothers. I started speaking to young mothers and eventually wrote a book based on a topic that was the most popular topic that I had, which was about female friendship.
I love that. I'm familiar with mops. I don't know that we had mops. I'm a little bit older than you are, or a tad bit older. I don't know we had mops back then, but I have recently been involved, and it's just a fabulous way for women to connect outside of regular church. And I love the fact that you don't have to attend church necessarily to be a part of it.
Exactly. I love that about it. And I was able to invite friends who would never come to a Bible study, but they would come to learn how to be a better mother and connect. And so our MOTS group is one of the largest in the country. We had, when I was the coordinator, over 250 women involved.
Wow, that's a lot of women.
It was a lot. Awesome. And we had a really strong evangelical focus, like trying to share the message of Jesus with these moms. And then also for many of them who had not been to church since childhood, to kind of help them bridge back into church now that they were hungry for guidance now that they had kids. So I love that ministry. I'm still really passionate about it. I still speak at MOPS. Even though I do retreats and much larger things now, I still speak at MOPS groups, local MOPS groups, because I love it. And actually in November, I'm flying to Denver to record a piece on friendship for MOPS International for their subscription video basis. So I'm
lovely.
so
Lovely.
happy to still be involved with them.
Is that on their website? I mean, if people want to come back and listen, is that a resource on their website that women can listen to?
It's actually, if you subscribe to MOPS, they have 100,000 subscribers. So when you pay into part of your charter fees, is you get access to these videos. So anyone who's involved with MOPS or pays into a MOPS group, they have this body of knowledge. Many MOPS groups are in small rural areas, so they can't hire speakers. Southern California, you know, we've got plenty. Right. But so MOPS, especially in this age of COVID, they're looking to create more online content for their moms who can't meet in person.
Well, bravo on them, because it is much, much needed. I think it's probably more needed right now in this COVID thing than ever to connect. I think it's such a challenge for us to connect, and especially for women with little toddlers playing around their legs, vying for attention. And
I can imagine.
That's time for friendships, right?
Right. I mean, this has been honestly one of the hardest seasons for friendship for me. And I'm like, I wrote a book about this, and it's so hard right now.
I didn't know how to do this, right? But nobody was prepared for this. Nobody, this is uncharted waters, and we don't know what we don't know as far as how to be intentional. So, as far as the book, and I think you've got a copy there. If you'll hold that up for our listeners. This is Amanda's amazing book. And oh my gosh, I was telling her earlier, I could not put it down. And it is so nice. A game changer. Oh my gosh. And I mean, I've come to conclusions, and I'm 3/4 of the way through. This topic, this is about life and about friendships, but I think it should be taught in curriculums, because it's a life skill. It is really what it is.
Thank you.
And that's the way I see it. Everybody needs to know what you said about having a healthy relationship. So what led you to write this particular book about friendship? I mean, what was it, something that prompted in your own heart, or people asking you all the time? What prompted you to write this particular book?
Well, I think any writer or teacher, we write about what we struggle with. And so I remember being a young mother and feeling like I just didn't have any friendship skills, and sitting in a mom's group going, why didn't someone come and tell us how to make friends or how to navigate these tricky things in friendship? Like, I really struggle with, how do I know if a friendship is healthy or not? Am I being judgmental when I want out of something? I just really wrestled with, how do I know if this is a healthy friendship or not? How do I know if I'm a good friend or not? And then years later, I just felt God calling me to speak about it and to wrestle with it. So I spoke about on this topic, and this was the name I gave it, for almost 4 years. I never planned to write this book. I was working on another book. I had signed with a literary agent for that book. And in the process, MOPS International hired me to speak at their convention, and they asked me to speak on All My Friends Have Issues. And my publisher saw that workshop and said, would you, they actually talked to my agent and said, would she write a book called All My Friends Have Issues? And I said, yes, I will. So I wrote them 3 chapters, and they bought it based on the first 3 chapters I wrote. And it was a real learning experience for me to try to put to words all the things I was trying to apply. I sat down thinking, I know what this is about. I wrote, when they told me that they wanted the book, I was actually camping in Big Sur, California. And I sat down by the campfire and I wrote the outline, 12 chapters. This is what I want it to be about. And I thought, I know what this book is about. And then when you go to write them, you think, oh, shoot, I don't know as much as I need to know to write this.
Right.
But so yeah, I really feel, I know it sounds very churchy to say that really God chose this topic for me. This isn't the book that I chose to write. It was the book that he
I
chose
get that.
for me to write.
I don't think I think it's an honest answer, because it's definitely so lovely and intertwined, all of the characteristics of as you described them. And you can see God's hand on the book in so many ways. I think as a believer, I could see, how, because he's all about, we know this, he's all about relationships, redeeming, restoring, horizontal and vertical. So so I'm not surprised that he's like, tag, you're it, girl. I'm going to write a book through you. And so I love that.
We have so many books about marriage as Christians. Right. There are so many books about marriage, so many books about relationships, but they're almost always about male-female relationships. And the thing is that we need just as much, I think friendship functions the same way that marriage does, that it's a God-honoring relationship that's meant to refine us and meant to encourage us and comfort us. And yet we're not really taught how to do it. So we learn life skills, like if you're a married person, you learn those life skills, you go to marriage workshops, right. But women's relationships are really complicated.
They are, and for a myriad of reasons, because it gets into, and what I'm fixing, what I'm going to say is because we're married, we're single. You have a career, you don't have a career. You have kids, you don't have kids. All of those factors. You're a Christian, you're not a Christian, or whatever. Right. And all of those factors, and then let's just throw in the fun part, competition. And it's an ugly word. And I think for me, it has probably destroyed more friendships, or what I thought were friendships, that ugly competition between women, especially because we can be pretty catty towards one another, and it's not ugly, and it's not pretty at all. So, which brings me to the question of, you give a description of a safe person and what they look like. Would you mind sharing that definition of what a safe person looks like according to what you've come to figure out?
Yeah. Well, I have to give credit to Henry Cloud and John Townsend, who wrote the book Safe People, which was a huge influence, the way that I wrote this and what I learned from them. What I'm going to take some of their words, and I use that in the book, which is that a safe person is humble, is someone who's willing to admit that they have issues, and in the context of conflict, particularly. A safe person is willing to admit their own faults. They're honest. So not only honest, like you ask me a direct question, I can give you a direct answer. But honest really means someone who has a lifestyle of transparency, who presents themselves as they truly are, and that we can communicate without manipulation. Like, can we ask honest questions as well as honest answers? Are we brave enough to say what we really think and believe? Because that creates safety. If passive aggression is a form of dishonesty, and it's really unsafe. And then also we're looking for a safe person is interested in spiritual growth and self-awareness. So for me, there's no more dangerous person than someone who has huge blind spots about themselves. So I can't be a safe friend if I don't understand me, if I don't understand. So getting to know, these are my issues. These are the regular sins that I struggle with. This is the major wounds in my life. These are the buttons I have that I don't want you to push. Right. If I don't know those things about myself, then I will be reactive rather than active in my relationships. And it's going to be scary to be around me.
Absolutely. Because I've done like the 12-step thing. I was in ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics, and we talked about the difference between being reactive versus responsive. Because a lot of times that reactive is a knee-jerk, and it's because we're triggered or something, and that knowing ourselves is so true. And I appreciate you speaking into that so beautifully. That's just incredible wisdom, and I appreciate that. I was just going to ask you, you mentioned, I laughed out loud when I was reading this part, you and your darling friend Vicky. And I love the part where I was talking about the the movie lines. Y'all can have a whole
Yeah.
conversation on that, and that just reminded me so much of me and my daughters, and
Uh-huh.
my daughters especially, but all three of my children.
Mhm.
And it's just a fun thing to have. So tell us about Vicky, and what was that amazing relationship all about, and what
Oh,
you
that's so neat. Yeah,
yeah.
the introduction is about Vicky. It's called My First Real Friend. So I met Vicky in fourth grade. So we were 9 years old, and we lived across the street from one another, and we ended up being friends all through high school. She was maid of honor in my wedding, and I was matron of honor in hers 4 weeks later. And Vicky and I just she was still like what I think of as an ideal friendship, because we we loved each other. We were loyal to each other. We had all these we spent so much time just building our own kind of language of fun. Like you said, we had movies that we loved. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, we would quote to each other all the time, or The Princess Bride. And then so we would have all this fun, but we also were able to have just these really deep conversations about things. We were able to wrestle with deep issues. Vicky was raised Jewish. To this day, she's a very devout Jew. I would come to temple with her. She would come to church with me. We would have these great relationships about God and faith.
Wow.
And then we also have just this sort of natural accountability, which is something that in the church the term accountability is used a lot in sort of a formal way, like I have an accountability partner, who's supposed to check on me for certain things. But Vicky and I, just because we knew each other so well, and we were so involved in each other's lives, that like Vicky would call me out if she saw me being fake. Like if we were in a different group of people, and she would be like, you're not acting like yourself around this guy or this group of people. Or what are you doing that for? Like, that's not you. Just this total so we have this sort of
the truth in you, what she is
doing.
Yeah.
Well, and because she just loved me and was so loyal to me, it's like you can hear truth from someone that loves you, right? Like there were people that talked behind my back, and she would stand up for me, and vice versa, And I look back, and we had some really good boundaries. I don't know how we knew to do this, but we had different friends. There were people she liked that I didn't feel drawn to, and vice versa. And that was okay. Like she could hang out with that girl who I wasn't crazy about, and this or that. And so,
they just happened. It sounds like they were both pretty healthy individuals coming into the picture, and maybe because of your ages when you first met. And I don't know what the other factors might be, but I just love hearing about that, because as we, I'm 59, so I know that as I get older, that type of friendship, that long-lasting friendship, we can typically count on one hand as we get older. That lasts for that length of time.
Well, what's so neat is we went through a period after college where we weren't. She lives in Colorado now, and I'm here in California. And, we grew apart in that time. With different things happened in our lives. We went different ways, but we've reconnected in the last several years. It's one good thing I love about Facebook, is that I reconnected with Vicky through Facebook. And, we still see each other. We communicate. Her mom still lives in the house she grew up in, and my mom still lives across the street. So when she comes home, we get together, and I'm real grateful for her. Yeah.
It's, and just what a gift to both of y'all. But I'm thinking, who knew that would serve as like a springboard for you to be able to write this book, because you had a good idea of what an excellent friendship looked like. And without that, I don't know that you would be able to write this book. I could be wrong, but you had something to at least gaze into and to reflect upon.
I think that's true. And I talk in the book about some of my dysfunctional friendships, because I had those too. I talk in the book about there was always sort of a parallel track where I had these solid, healthy friendships as an adult. This has been true of me too. Long-term, beautiful friendships. And then also this other track of these kind of where I really go wonky in those relationships.
That's a great word, wonky.
Wonky, like toxicity, codependency, like all kinds of stuff happening over here. And I'm grateful to God, because there was always also the plumb line of, okay, I know this feels good, why am I also drawn to this one? What's this
Yeah.
about? Why do I keep
Yeah.
doing
Why
this?
am I drawn to that?
too?
And I
Yeah.
think that we find ourselves, I know as I get to know myself better, those questions, they come forward.
Mhm.
Why am I attracted to this person and want to, or why this relationship? And
Yeah.
I think it's a great question that we need to properly ask ourselves from time to time in
Mhm.
friendships and relationships. I would totally agree with that. They're
Yeah.
not great ones that we want to ask ourselves. We don't want to, they're hard, is what I'm trying to say. They're hard questions. Now,
They're
are we willing to look at it and be honest with ourselves? And because a lot of times we are not, or at
Mhm.
least I know I'm not. It's one I said. You give an outline for great friendships and you talk about forgiveness, making allowances.
Mhm.
How does that differ from boundaries? Or, as I mentioned in the questions, is that inclusive of boundaries?
Mhm.
So, can you shed a little bit of light on that, what you're talking about as far as the forgiveness and making allowances? Because you gave some beautiful examples in your book on that.
Yeah. Well, that has probably been the hardest struggle for me in any relationship. I mean, it's why the book's called All My Friends Have Issues, because this concept of, oh gosh, Martha, this is so embarrassing. My one of my kids unplugged my computer and the battery light just went on. So let's just get.
Okay. So we were getting ready to dive into the friendships, and you had talked about the boundaries and forgiveness and making allowances, and why that is such a difficult thing for us to work through. So, can you expound on that for just a minute?
Mhm. That is probably the core question of the book. The core concept of the book is that all relationships bear a certain amount of risk because everyone we go into relationship with is flawed. And so if we have to go into relationships with the concept that we have to make allowances for one another's faults because of our love, that, that's a Bible verse that I love. And then also, love covers a multitude of sins. So we have to love each other deeply. So that's always been the trickiest, most difficult thing for me to understand as a Christian woman is like, I know forgiveness is essential to relationships. I know it's essential for my spiritual health to forgive other people and to admit when I'm wrong and receive forgiveness. But where does the concept of boundaries come in terms of what I set as a standard for how I want to be treated in general in relationships? How do I know basically what is too much? And like when someone came to Jesus and said, how many times do I forgive my brother? 7 times. And he says 7 times 7. And that verse is like a great verse for creating codependency if you misunderstand it, because codependency is when we allow people to cross into our boundaries over and over again, and we forgive them, but we continue to reconcile even though it's not wise to do so. So I can't answer that question without really talking about what it means to be wise. I think what scripture teaches us is that we are supposed to forgive everyone we come into contact with who wrongs us. But when we enter into deep relationships with people, friendships, where we choose to spend our time and open our hearts, we need to look for the fruit of wisdom in those women's lives and in the way that we relate to one another. And that is how we know, yeah, I will forgive you no matter what, but there might be a time to step out of relationships because they're unhealthy, or to be able to set a boundary that says, you know what, we keep fighting about this one thing and you keep saying you're sorry, but it keeps happening again.
Yeah.
So I need to step back and guard my heart a little bit more. I can't share these things with you anymore because I feel like even though I keep telling you not to give me advice, you keep doing that.
Yeah.
Or even though I don't want you to share my secrets with other people, you keep doing that. So I forgive you, I love you, but I'm not going to share that with you anymore. Does that make sense?
It does. It does make sense. I mean, I recently had a friend of mine, I called her I used the word kiddo. And I don't normally use that. It was like, okay, kiddo, I was responding. And I had forgotten because she's someone I don't see very often. I had forgotten that she had said, please don't ever call me that. And we had to talk through that because I was like, it was such a big trigger for her, but I had to, had totally forgotten that that was a trigger for her, that word, that phrase.
Right.
And
right.
I was just there at her house helping her get some things done. And but we're still friends. I just don't ever use that phrase again with her because I know, or she strongly reminded me that, and I won't do that again.
Yeah.
And if I do, it's not going to be because I don't love her or that I don't respect her. It's because I've slipped up. It's because it's not something that I intentionally do.
Totally.
And so yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think that's important. It's like I know if there are certain friends, we don't talk politics because I'm not. That's just not going to happen. It's just off the table. Yeah.
Isn't that been terrible? I mean, like that right now. I've had a couple groups ask me, can you come and talk to us about how to be friends with people with different political beliefs? And I'm like, sure, but I have no idea how to do that.
Yeah. Well,
let me see if I can do that.
Well, I get that, but I was speaking to that for just a second, just because of a class that I'm taking, if I may, just because it's a class of resilient leadership from the School of Theology in Seattle, the Allender Center. And
my favorite.
Oh, they are so wise, and everything that they do is with purpose and intent. Is incredible. But they're getting ready to put us in modules, and they had us all tell a bit of the story. Anyway, the point was they talk about, if we only hang out with girls who have strawberry blonde hair and white skin and freckles, I mean, it doesn't allow for very much tolerance on our part.
Right.
And so we have to be intentional about learning how to make friends outside of our convenient little circle that we have over here. And I think that really is a challenge for us to make and be a friend. And I think only as we are willing to look at ourselves and know that I have issues, can we do that safely and well? And so it as you mentioned, that's a difficult thing, I think.
So difficult.
And then I think COVID just adds to it right now. Everybody's emotions are way up here just because things are not normal.
Yeah, if I can speak to that a little bit, one of the things I learned about this in the process, I'm trying to apply my own principles that I learned in this book as I was writing it. One of my very best friends and I, 20 years friendship, we vote differently. But we've always seen that we have the same kind of morality and ethics, but we believe in different functions of government, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So we've always been able to have really interesting discussions about politics because we would always joke, like, oh, if everyone Democrat was like you, I'd be like you. Well, if every Republican was you, I'd be a Republican, because we would find that common ground, and it really taught us. It's so dangerous when we think that everyone who votes differently than us is evil. I mean, that is such a dangerous belief system, because it's like saying everyone who's a Methodist instead of a Presbyterian doesn't know the true Christ. It's like, right?
I was raised Presbyterian, so.
Oh, sorry.
Chosen person. So everybody else is going to hell. I mean, right?
Actually, so was I, and so that came from more deep without me realizing it. But so it's one of the things that I advocate for as when I speak on all different subjects is like, you've got to get the perspective of different theologies, different denominations, different political parties, and that's all great until you have to do it with your best friend. And it was working great until about 2 months ago. And then we started to fight when shut down. And we live in California, which has really hardcore shutdown government that said, you can't go to church, you can't go to school, you can't do it, but then allowed the Black Lives Matter protests. And they're like, well, that doesn't make, and so it was just like, people were just losing their minds about this.
Right.
And it's
They
really
were angry about it.
understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were angry about
Because we're
it.
trying to understand why this and not that.
Because there's no consistency. We all have so much cognitive dissonance right now because there's no consistency. Even in my own life, there isn't consistency. I allow myself to do some things because the risk is worth it, and then other things I don't. And so she and I just started a fight. I mean, so we finally had to say, and it took 3 different conversations where we said, we're not going to talk about this anymore. It isn't getting us anywhere. We're hurting each other's feelings. We've been friends for 20 years, and we can't let this break us down, because neither of us are our best version of ourselves right now. I will tell you right now, I am so not the best version of myself. My normal buttons, that are sometimes like you push my button and it's like this big, like a fingernail. Now it's like this big, like a hair trigger. And so we said, look, I love you so much. I want to hear about how your kids are doing in school. I want to talk about what you're learning with the Lord right now. Tell me about work.
Yeah.
Let's not do it.
Right. And that's so wise that you realize that, your trigger buttons are way up here. And you said something interesting. I am not the best version of myself right now. And I think recognizing that and admitting it, and putting such value in the connection that you have, that it's not worth us going here right now, or right now, because of this and this, because I love you and I value you as a friend, and I think that, sometimes we just don't see that. I have not experienced that a lot in my life. I'll just say that, okay? And that, and that's on both sides of the fence. I'm not saying it's all the other person's fault, so that's not what I'm saying. That willingness to own your own crap and say, you know what, I love you. I value our friendship more than us agreeing on this particular subject right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Huge.
And it, setting that boundary didn't feel good. One of my issues, my tendency to go to is enmeshment and codependency. So I have this fear that, like, if we have any separation, that our relationship is threatened. We have to be, my default when I'm stressed is, I need total connection with you and total agreement, or you might leave me. That's very scary to me. So in this time when I so deeply need my friendships, I need people. I'm a major connector. That's the most important thing in my life, is my relationships. It's probably, and can even be an idol. Like, if I don't have good connection with people, I just lose my mind. It didn't feel good to say, you, my best friend, who I have always been able to talk to everything about, I have to set a boundary around this topic. It didn't feel good to me, but it was still right. Yeah. It felt unnatural. It didn't feel comfortable, but it was wise. And
and I would dare say, after, I would hope, I think I would hope in a good friendship like yours with your friend, that maybe at some point y'all can revisit those things.
Absolutely.
And that, I think that is my hope, that especially as Christians, I would hope that, that's not forever off the table. That we can both grow enough spiritually and emotionally and heal enough and be, however, whatever else you want to throw in there, that we can revisit this down the road.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And maybe that's
when the button shrinks. When that big button is just a little bit smaller, and it doesn't feel like so much is riding on everything and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And we also both agreed to, we both got off social media for a while. Great boundary, because we were finding that we were both being so aggravated and worked up that we would go to one another trying, hey, comfort me, because your people are saying all this crazy crap. And then she's like, oh yeah, well, your people said all this crazy crap. And we're like, we're starting to make the other person responsible for everyone who votes like them. And it was better to just not do that anymore. So, but that gets
social
back to
media definitely adds to the aggravation. I mean, I can get triggered in a skinny minute on there. It could be about anything. It could be sex trafficking. It could be about, oh my God, you just were so rude to that person in the coffee shop. Stop it already. I mean,
totally.
whatever. It doesn't matter. I mean, just because of the fact that we are so limited with being able to connect with people and, all the hugging and that we would do and the connectiveness that we normally have is just so crappy right now. I mean, I have another word, but I won't use that right now. But anyway, it's just, I'm not happy about it. I am an ENFP person.
You're not fooling anybody. We all know what you're thinking.
This is true. What is the saying I have? I cuss a little and Jesus loves me, or so whatever it was I used to say. But you used a phrase in your book. I just thought it was so funny. One of your friends said somebody peed in her Cheerios. I was like, no, it's somebody peed in my Wheaties. So you were like, where did she come up with this? And I use that phrase. It's like, she just, you don't like her because this is what happened, right? And,
right. Oh my gosh.
Such a funny phrase. I just thought that's hilarious.
We're going to have to tell your listeners the context of that. And that is that.
Right.
It was in the context of talking about encouragement, and that, we need to keep people around us who are encouraging to us and not competitive with us. And so, my mentor taught me, you don't want to call someone with your good news if they're just going to pee in your Cheerios.
Right.
Like, there are a lot of ways that people take away your joy with their words.
Exactly.
Oh, are you sure you want to do that?
Exactly.
Or say something competitive. Yeah. So when you find someone that you can call and they will just unadulteratedly celebrate with you, that is someone that you need in your life for sure.
Absolutely. You feel celebrated. And, that's, that is such an important element, I think, that is sometimes missing out on relationships. Whether it's men and women or women to women, but for whatever reason, I know why, it's the competition crowd, that we feel like we have to be better than Susie at making cookies. You mentioned when you made, oh darling, what was the cute little story you shared about something you had made for a group?
I made
and you were like, you were so proud of it, and they were like, and their response was, she's just showing us up. What is that all about? And I'm like, oh, I'm just my heart hurt for you. So share with us that story, because it was just, I think it's something that women need to hear, because it's that competition crap again. That ugly thing of competition.
Yeah, I love that you brought up that story. So I brought for my daughter's Girl Scout troop, I had signed up for treats for St. Patrick's Day. And I brought Rice Krispie treats made with Lucky Charms, because I thought that was cute.
I love that. OMG.
And then I made fruit skewers in a rainbow pattern. So it's like, rainbows of fruit for St. Patrick's Day. And I was so excited because I love to do stuff like that. And I brought it in to make all the little girls happy. And two of the moms were like, man, you're just making us look bad. And I was like, oh, that's so sad. Like, why didn't you just enjoy that your girls get to do this? And why did it become something competitive?
Right.
And the thing is, both those women that said that are very dear women, and they actually love me and are real supportive of, the big things that I do in life. And I think we just don't realize what those words mean. We're just trained to say things like that without even recognizing the way that that's peeing in someone's Cheerios. Like, you say someone does something great and you're like, oh, love it, jealous, I'm so jealous. And we mean that as a compliment, but it actually is a way of giving a compliment with a slap attached to it.
It's a backhanded compliment, right? Yeah.
Right. It's that idea that, unfortunately, it's that belief that if you have something good, it takes something from me. Like, there's not enough pie to go around,
Yeah.
And there are things that I talked about in the story with Girl Scouts. They made me the cookie manager one year, and it was so bad.
Oh, I remember that you said your husband had to come rescue you.
Rescue me the day that the receipts were due because I could not balance it. I couldn't do it. I had like the little yellow papers all over. I just absolutely suck at that. And when I look at a woman who can, do numbers, who's great with numbers, I hope I don't go to her, oh, I hope I don't say to her, oh yeah, you're making me feel stupid. I hope I just celebrate, gosh, I'm so glad that someone else in this Girl Scout troop has this gift and I have this one. Or in the body of Christ, like, I'm so glad that someone can do this thing. Glory to God. God made you like that. I say glory to God that you can do that thing. But it comes back to this idea that there's not enough to go around, that somehow if we have something, we take it from somebody else. And I will tell you that I definitely grew up with that model to me, that my mom was one of 6 kids. And I will say that of those 6 kids, there was just not enough love to go around. There was a lot of like, who is the favorite child?
Yeah.
And my mom did not teach us that, but it was the place in her heart that she came from.
That she struggled with.
That she struggled with. And so whatever she might have taught us, there's still that modeling that there's not going to be enough to go around. And it's a lie. It's not true.
Yeah. But it feels true. At times it feels true. It's kind of like, because we all have that deep, deep desire to be seen and be heard.
Mm-hmm.
And especially like in my background story, not being seen and not being heard is a huge part of that. And so I would, oh, don't forget me, don't forget me.
Right.
And so it can become a point of competition without meaning to be. And
right.
And
can I be valued? Am I valued overlooked? Too? Anne Lamott, and I think the main way to deal with it is to acknowledge it. Like everything, for me, everything comes down to self-awareness. And if you can also add the spiritual practice of taking that to God for healing, but self-awareness. Anne Lamott writes the most hilarious thing about this idea that I know about, like there's not enough pie to go around. And she said, even though I know there's plenty of pie and love and air to go around, secretly, I still believe there's a pie. I will go to my grave brandishing a fork. And isn't that just brilliant? And
I love that. Yeah.
And so the key for non-competitive relationships, and you didn't actually ask me this direct question, is to acknowledge the fact that we struggle with envy, to actually acknowledge it to ourselves and to ask God for healing in it and to process that and where does it come from, so we don't spend it on each other. To say, oh, I'm a Christian woman, I don't struggle with envy, or oh, I'm just going to be encouraging.
That's true. I mean, and that's okay. I'm just going to say it, that's bullshit, because we do. Everybody struggles with envy, and
so much.
Everybody struggles with envy. I mean, because the heart is deceptive above all things. So for us to sit here and go, you were talking about being raised the way you were, and I know you said you were raised in Northern California. I was raised in the South, and it was the whole mentality of you brought up the difference between being a peacekeeper versus a peacemaker, and it was modeled in my family really well. I love my dad, but he was the peacekeeper. And I think even as you talked about beautifully, I don't remember the particular examples you offered, but we were raised in the South. Oh, we don't say that because that would hurt Lily Mae's feelings. But we'll talk about Lily Mae behind her back.
Right. And then we'll bless her heart.
Bless her, and Anna, bless her heart, or depending how we say it, bless her heart. But my dad was excellent and keeping the peace, and he would even come back and say, I learned it well, but he would say, I agree with you, you're right, but blah, 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 blah. To keep this at bay, we're not going to talk about that. And that does not serve us well. And that And so talk about the peacekeeper versus the peacemaker. What does that look like for us as the body of Christ or as women? What does that actually really look like?
Well, there's two key things in this. The first is that it is biblical to confront someone who's hurt your feelings. It is biblical. Jesus said, if someone sins against you, go to him in private and talk to him about it. Like Jesus, we are supposed to do that. That is biblical. And the second reason is the reason Jesus said to do that is because of how our hearts are made. Our hearts are made for righteousness and connection. And we are not supposed to pretend that we don't get our feelings hurt or that being sinned against is okay. That's not what being forgiving means. Forgiving is not minimizing. It's saying, this hurts so bad, but I am choosing not to pay it back. It isn't denying that you ever got hurt.
Right.
In fact, I can't tell you, I work in care and recovery ministry at our church. So I deal with really wounded people, addicts and abused people and former abusers. And they are taught oftentimes in the main part of church, well, you just need to forgive. And forgiveness is done like this. You just need to forgive, this flick of the wrist.
Yeah.
Forgive like Christ forgave you. God forgave you. Christ died a brutal death to forgive you. Forgiveness is painful. It does not minimize hurt.
Right.
It acknowledges the full wrongness of what happened.
Yeah.
If we don't acknowledge the full wrongness, we will be resentful. It is how we were made.
Absolutely.
Is how we were created. We were not created in God's image. We were created to recognize wrong and for it to need payment,
right,
or acknowledgement. It needs payment and it needs healing. So in a stupid example, if someone made an offhand comment to you at a party that hurt your feelings, say your friend who doesn't like to be called kiddo, say she hates to be called kiddo, and she told you once and you forgot and you just kept doing it, and she decided to not ever say anything to you about it again. But it hurt her every time, and it hurt her and it hurt her and it hurt her and hurt her until she decides she can't be around you. It breaks the relationship. Or she goes and tells somebody else that you keep doing that. That does not make peace. That keeps peace, but it doesn't create peace in our heart. So when God says peacemakers, peacemaking is a deep heart wellness. And I'm saying this better right now than I think I said in the book, so maybe you don't need to buy it. But it is just so critical that we tell people the truth, to give them the opportunity to acknowledge it. I talk in the book about my friend Wendy, and honestly, this week I've had a couple of people, it's been a brutal week, Martha, in my friendships, because I've had a couple people tell me, you hurt my feelings. When you said this thing, I did not, my friend Jody put it this way. She goes, you said this thing to me the other day. I did not take that well.
Yeah.
I did not feel good when you said that.
Yeah.
And it had happened a week ago. And so, because I'm learning, I said, okay, I need a minute to think about it before I respond. Hold on a second. And we really had like 30 seconds of radio silence on the phone, which felt very uncomfortable.
It does feel uncomfortable. Yeah.
Right.
You're right. The silence. Yeah.
Yeah, the silence. And so I took 30 seconds to just like, okay, I feel defensive. I feel all the adrenaline's coming up because I want to be a perfect friend. I don't like that you're telling me you didn't like something I said. I remember what I said and I meant it when I said it. So I can't take it back exactly. But so I was able to say, I snapped at you. I was harsh the way I said that. I am sorry. Will you accept my apology for snapping at you? And can I share with you why I said it? And then can you share? And we did this back and forth. And I am so grateful for women who have the courage to say, you hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Because I would so much rather know than not know
and
and not have the
and then
opportunity
wonder
to make
what happened to the relationship, you know,
Yeah.
because I mean, I've had, I'm remembering a relationship with a woman back in Franklin, I mean, Chattanooga, Tennessee. And my husband and her late husband were good, dear friends, and she and I were. And all of a sudden, she just stopped talking to me. And I think that's what's really hurtful is, you know, even, you know, when you know that there's something wrong with the friendship, but people, they don't want to talk about it. That's where I really struggle, me personally, because, you know, you've mentioned it, and it should be common knowledge. Emails and texting, they don't work, you know, and because it can be so misconstrued and so misunderstood. And I'm like, no, 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 no. We really, you know, even if we have to do several 5-minute conversations, I don't care.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
just so important. And I can't stress that enough to, you know, to help at least because it brings about healing or closure, at least, I think,
Mhm.
to a particular subject. You know, if you know, are wrong or someone's hurt your feelings or you've hurt theirs and you're just not clear on what happened, at
Right.
least tell me, you know,
Yeah.
don't send me an email. I
Oh
don't
gosh.
want your email, you know. It makes you feel like it's not worth it to have a friendship with me.
Right.
It's the message that I think people get. You know,
I
it's not
think
worth, it's not important to you.
when I feel like email, it's like a drive-by shooting. You know, it's like there's no there's no way to respond.
That's right.
Like, I took a bullet and you're just gone. I can't say anything.
Exactly.
And, you know,
I just died 1,000 deaths. Thank you
yeah.
so much. Right.
Well, and I get the temptation. I think I say in the book, even like write down note cards if you have to. Like some people want to write down because they're not good at back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and they're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing, and so they want to write it down to get it
Right.
careful. But it is too easy to misunderstand. It's too easy for that email to get forwarded to someone either on purpose or by accident to other
Right.
people. It's maybe you wrote a text in 5 minutes and then it gets read 45 times. So it's courageous, but conflict really should be resolved, you know, face to face if you can do it. Definitely over the phone, because it's really important to hear people's tones. You know, one of the other important things about peacekeeping or being people that are peacemakers is it's a litmus test for the healthiness of a friendship, how safe a friendship is. It really is. I've had relationships where have ended because we can't resolve conflict. And that didn't feel good, but it's necessary, you know, for long-term relationships, for sure. If you go to someone with a hurt and their reaction is, oh yeah, well, you did this, this, and this, and this, and this, you know, and they can't.
You do that really well, by the way.
Thank you. I've had a lot of practice. I've had a lot of experiences. I've had a couple relationships end with F words and clicks. So, you know, not mine. Not that I've never used that word, but I haven't ended a relationship with that word yet, but it has happened to me a couple times. And there is a point where you go, okay, that was an inevitable end. That was a necessary ending. That was not a relationship that was safe to have an inner part of my heart.
Yeah.
There was not going to be safety, comfort, encouragement, consolation in that friendship. Yeah. I think at the deepest core of being authentic, everyone is afraid if you really knew me, you'll leave. But the reality is, if you're going to leave, if you really know me, go ahead and leave.
Go ahead and leave.
Go ahead and leave.
And you, in that fear, I mean, I know we'll have to wrap it up here in a few minutes. You talk about that as well, about the fear, especially of people who are grieving deeply or people who are clinically depressed. And yeah, I've been both of those people. And it's the fear of if you really knew my life and how crappy it was, or all the pain there, you wouldn't want to know me as a friend. And it's, you know, the courageous person who stays, you know, it's the safe person who stays, I think.
Right.
That's my own take on it. But it's scary to let your true self be known. I'm just going to say that it's scary. It's not fun. I mean, it seems like, oh my gosh. And, and you talked about, I think at the beginning of your book, how did you describe it? The oversharing.
Right.
And I isolated for 20 years after my divorce from my first husband, the father of my children. And let me just say, when I finally decided to reconnect to the world, I was president of that club.
The oversharing club.
Yeah, the oversharing club. I mean, because if you would stand still long enough, and I had to learn quickly that that makes really not for a good foundation for long-lasting relationship or friendship. It's like,
Martha,
oh girl, that was too much information,
I am so glad you said that, because after I said, if you're going to leave me, go ahead and leave, I thought, oh, no, I need to put the asterisk in there, because this is really important thing to understand, that we don't want to do that at the very beginning. You don't want to bring the whole iceberg out of the water in your second date. And there are women who do that. They tell you everything, because if you're going to leave me, leave now.
Leave now.
And that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because people will leave you because it's too much. It's a sign of, I'm going to say something really bold, and please don't feel this as a judgment, my sweet sisters who are doing this. It's a sign of emotional immaturity when you share too much too soon, and it scares people. What we have to do is build confidence that people can receive our deep selves for over a period of time. If you need to overshare and like vomit everything that's happening in your life, that's what support groups and therapy are for. And they are great gifts to us when we're in crisis. But when you're making a brand new friend right after you've experienced a death, or you've left an abusive marriage, or something major is happening in your life, find a specific support group to rally around you and let you share all that. But don't tell a brand new friend all of that, because I don't want you to get crushed and be lied to that you're too much for everyone. It's just too much right this second.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
And I appreciate you saying that, because I am an ENFP. I never meet a stranger. My kids.
Oh my gosh, so am I, Martha.
Huh?
I am too. I'm an ENFP.
Who knew,
right?
Sorry.
I was too excited.
Fun. I mean, but I don't know on the Enneagram. I don't know what I am, because I need to retake my test. But anyway, and so I have been told those things, because I don't meet a stranger, and it's not that I go sharing everything I've learned since, and largely because I've healed a lot. I didn't start on that journey till like 7 years ago, 2013, and it was really a result of just not liking who I was, and decided that some things needed to change, largely myself. And anyway, but I don't know how I got on that subject. Anyway, I appreciate all you said today. And just in wrapping up, I will say this: when people start, taking a step back and looking and assessing their relationship, do you think it's necessary that I've looked at my relationship, my friendship with Joanne? I just don't out there. I don't have a friend named Joanne, I don't think. But anyway, Joanne, you're listening. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to use your name. But and we've decided that, or I've decided that she's just not a safe person. How do you leave that relationship well? Do you need to tell them, or you just, because I think if we don't have that conversation, it leaves them wondering why. Is there a graceful way to do that and be a peacemaker that looks well?
Well, I need 45 minutes to answer that question. I actually.
Well, let's just have to do a part 2 on how to leave the relationship well.
Well, I will say that the audiobook has a bonus chapter that's about that, how to do healthy exits. It didn't make it in the published book, but the audiobook, I wrote a whole chapter about that, and I wish it was in the book. It depends on how deep the relationship is. One of the things I've learned in 12-step is that not to give feedback to people who are not asking for it. So I don't necessarily.
And that's hard.
Right.
That's hard.
So I don't necessarily want to have a breakup relationship with someone where I make a big speech, like in a romantic comedy where I tell you everything you ever did wrong as I leave, hoping that you'll change. I think the safest thing to do is to start by setting different boundaries. Kind of a gradual withdrawal from relationships is actually healthy and kind. And here's why. So say Joanne, you're just finding like she's just so negative and argumentative when you're talking, and it's just not working. And you've talked to her about it before. That's just and you're just finding this doesn't work. You start having less conversations. You reduce the frequency of those conversations. Gotcha. And if she were to come to you and say, "Hey, I miss you. I haven't seen you in a long time." That's a place to give feedback. You know what? This is just, it so depends on the situation. You might choose to, one more time, I'd just like to share with you, this is what's going on. And might find that she's wise and is willing to repent, but more often, I found that some of the most toxic relationships that I've had, I've withdrawn, they've just gone away. They haven't chased me. As I've just kind of pulled back, and that's been okay. I know that's not a super satisfying answer, but the first thing to do is just to guard your heart and change maybe what we talk about. It's not always that we have to like have a breakup. It's that maybe someone gets moved from the inner circle of our life to a concentric circle. I don't share my deep feelings with her. I don't,
Yeah. And I think, and I'll just close on this. I think that that's such a better approach than I think than what we've been taught. Because we talk about toxic relationships and we talk about boundaries, and I have my own thoughts on that. But I think sometimes identifying people as, I think sometimes that can help. Those labels can keep us from doing the own work that we need on our own self. If that makes any sense.
I agree.
We put all these labels up on people, and I'm going to avoid this person because they're toxic, or this person because, and I'm not saying that doesn't need to be done sometimes, but right. I think that sometimes that can keep me. It's a lazy ass excuse for doing the work on myself, because it's easier just to avoid people.
I really agree. I think toxic is a dangerous word. Gary Thomas wrote a great book about toxicity and what it really is. He's a great, and if you're really struggling with that, I mean, he really talks about like toxic is like you have a murderous spirit, a lying spirit. It isn't just like everyone you don't get along with, right?
Right. Yeah, I think it's like the cool buzzword right now. It's kind of like self-care. You mentioned the I think you were talking about that word self-care as a buzzword right now, and we've taken that word toxic and we've applied it to everybody we don't get along with. Right. It's convenient, It's like, oh, they're toxic. Don't bother them. It's like, okay.
It's all about them. Yeah. And it's not, but sometimes it's just that people are oil and water. They just can't, my buttons and your buttons are just not compatible.
Right. Right. And that's okay.
And so I talk in the audiobook about it's not you, it's me is like the famous breakup speech. It's not you, it's me. And the truth is, it's not you, it is me. If I leave a relationship, it's about me. It's not about you. It's me taking responsibility for this is what isn't healthy. This is how I feel. I don't have the capacity for this kind of arguments, or I can't be in these. It is me. The emphasis is me, not you're this, you're that. I have to get away from you. It's not you, it's me. For me, I need to step back. That's what feels wise and healthy for me. Yeah. Not that you would say that, but that's the posture that I believe we should have when we step away from relationships. Yeah. In humility, what is God calling me to do? And how is this relationship keeping me from doing that? Yeah. Where is it pulling my focus away from the relationships that are flourishing? Where is it pulling me away from my ministry, from parenting, from my marriage? For me, a toxic relationship doesn't need toxic people. Does that like you don't have to be fully toxic people to be in an unhealthy relationship? And for me, an unhealthy relationship is one that draws me away from God's purpose in my life in this present moment. And that's a very deeply personal issue. It's why the last chapter is on prayer and really engaging with God about ourselves. Because when it comes back to it, that's the only person I can control is me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Amanda, this has been a wow time with you. I've learned so much. I knew I would, and I appreciate you sharing your authentic self, if I could use that word. Your sense of
Absolutely.
humor. I love your sense of humor and your honesty, I guess is the word your willingness to be transparent with your readers and say, this is where I sucked as a friend and this is where I struggle with as a woman, and it's much, much needed. And I will say again, if you have not read Amanda's book, All My Friends Have Issues, pick one up today. I got my copy on Kindle, and it's definitely a game changer. If you're really interested in learning how to develop skills as a woman, as a human, to build better relationships on every level, because we're not getting out of this world without them. So we might as well learn how to do them well.
Right.
And so, and it's something that, we can teach if you feel like you didn't learn that growing up, hey, you can always unlearn. And that's the beauty of this. And so, uh, and then you can teach your children or your, it's a gift that you can pass along is what I'm trying to say. So Amanda, I'm thankful for you today, friend. And, I appreciate your time and your willingness to share this morning with all of my listeners. And again, that book is available on Amazon and a myriad of editions. And we thank you, Amanda Anderson, for sharing this morning about All My Friends Have Issues. Thank you,
Thank
Amanda
you.
Anderson. And until we meet again, my friends, this is Martha Flowers signing off for today from Healing Moments with Martha. Enjoy your day.